I'm Louisa Barn with the Horse Talk Show. I'm here at Copperline Farm. I have Sinead Halpin and Tick Maynard here. We're doing a series at home with Tick and Sinead, talking a little bit about their life, about growing up, getting married, the stalker. And I'm going to hand the mic over to the stalker and let him tell us a little bit about his accomplishments, which are many and varied, kind of bringing two worlds together, which I love to see, the eventing world and real true horsemanship, and also just to mention his mentors and who he's learned so much from.
Well, I guess I got my first kind of taste of high performance sport, not in eventing, but in other sports. In high school, I played a lot of basketball, and then after that, and I ran track and cross country. I did a lot of different sports, but I always rode. Ever since the time, like even before I can walk, I remember riding. So that was always a part of my childhood. And then when I was done high school, I started doing a sport called modern pentathlon, which is actually 5 sports all done in one day, which is running, swimming, shooting, fencing, and riding. And the riding is show jumping. And I continued in that for 5 or 6 years, and I was training pretty much full-time for that for 2 or 3 years after university. And I was lucky enough to get on the Canadian national team, and we traveled around the world together. We went to Switzerland and Egypt and Argentina and Brazil and Germany and France, and went a couple of competitions in the United States. And twice I was Canadian national champion in that, and in 2007 I went to the Pan American Games in Brazil. And once you kind of go to games, like I know Sinead's experienced that a few times with the American team, once you kind of go to games like that, it's just, you just kind of like think, I want to get back here, it's pretty inspiring. And around that time, I was getting more and more into horses as well. And that in 2007 is when I stopped competing in pentathlon, and I started doing horses full time. And all I'd really experienced was in Vancouver, in sort of a small, in terms of riding, a small town. Obviously, it's a big city, but the riding world is quite small, and a lot of show jumping and a bit of dressage, but not really much eventing where I grew up. And so I decided to go out and become a working student at a few different places in a few different barns to sort of see what was out there. And I worked at a dressage barn in Germany, and I worked for the O'Connors in Florida, and I worked for Ann Krasinski, the show jumper, in Florida and in New Jersey. And then I also went on this little side path, and I went to Texas, and I worked on a 7,000-acre cattle and buffalo ranch, and I worked for a guy called Bruce Logan, and that place just inspired me so much. Even though I think I didn't really learn anything about riding, which was my initial goal, I learned so much about horses, which is just, I learned what a different thing that is being a good rider and being a good horseman. There's some horsemen that maybe never even get on a horse, but they can just read a horse. They can just see what a horse is thinking and feeling, and they're able to predict things and explain things so clearly. In Vancouver, all the horses were in sort of small paddocks. I'd never experienced what it was like to try to catch a horse in a 10-acre field that didn't want to be caught. Like all of a sudden you got to really start thinking how horses think in order to make that happen. And that was the first place, with the O'Connors as well, and a lot of other people, Jonathan Field, the Pirellis here, so many people have sort of taken me and inspired me on this journey to more and more try to understand how horses think. And even lately, it's sort of taken me, just even in the past few months, down this path where I'm trying to figure out how animals learn in general, not just horses, how dogs learn, how birds learn, how primates learn, how elephants learn. And once you kind of start down this path, it becomes like an addiction, and you start to see all these correlations even between how people learn, and you start to see how many more similarities there are than differences. And that's sort of where I'm at right now. And Sinead said that in the last segment, that we're a student of the horse. And some days I find it hard to imagine that we're teaching people, because I just start to realize like how much there is for us to learn. Like every day, like it's just so incredible how much there is to learn. And it's so inspiring once you kind of realize that. It doesn't actually take away from it. And you don't think, oh my God, there's so much to learn. You think, oh my God, there's so much to learn. And you just wake up excited. Yeah. So that's sort of where I'm at with that.
That's true. Tell us about mentors for you.
So the 3 biggest mentors I have in my life are my parents, my mother and my father, and my wife. And those are the people that I bounce ideas off of. Those are the people that I continue to talk with every day. And then there's also a lot of people, some of them are quite famous people that I've learned from for weeks or months at a time. The O'Connors, David and Karen, Ann Krasinski. We're both watching some of these master classes with Ian Miller, Bruce Logan in Texas, Jonathan Field in British Columbia. He was one of the first guys to really inspire me. He was a student of Pat and Linda Pirelli's, and Jonathan Field was one of these guys that I'd never seen some of the stuff that you can do with groundwork. When you ride a horse, everything is through touch. The horse feels you and you feel the horse. But with groundwork, it's to do with sight, it's to do with body language, it's how the horse reads you. And I remember seeing Jonathan Field just working with a horse online, and the horse was beside him. And when he sped up, the horse sped up. And when he slowed down, the horse slowed down. And when he backed up, the horse backed up. And none of it was through touch. It was all through the horse watching him. And it was like, if you ever watch a mare and a foal or birds in the sky that fly together in formation and they just turn at the same time. And that's what it was like with Jonathan with this horse. And that was the first day I'd ever really seen somebody of that caliber be able to do the groundwork with the horse. And I would just remember getting like goosebumps. There's a few moments in my life where I get goosebumps from watching people with horses, and that was one of them for sure. Like Sinead, I'm taking some lessons from Leslie Law down here, and there's so many great people in Ocala. James Burtwell helps both of us with dressage. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that we could go into depth and talk about, but but the horse, I guess, is their main instructor.
You're so right. We're surrounded by the best of the best here in all breeds and all disciplines. I realize how many amazing people we have here in Ocala, and we can tap into that and learn, I think, a little bit from everybody, really. I think if you take some of the best people that and you gain a little knowledge from each, you can end up being really well-rounded. What would be one tip that you would give to up-and-coming? I feel like I missed out on horsemanship except for what sort of just naturally came to me around horses as a kid. I think that as knowledge, and you and Sinead mentioned earlier, online, learning is so incredible these days, virtual learning. But what is one thing you would say to people you think would help them move along and be successful?
Yeah, first of all, to reiterate what Sinead said, there's so much information online. There's the Noel Floyd Master Classes. There's the Horseman's University, which we've talked about before, with Nick Rivera from Wisconsin and Jake Birnbaum from just down the road. But there's so much information. There's not really any excuse for not being able to find information. There's so many books. There's so many DVDs. There's so many YouTube videos. It's all out there. But really, in terms of one piece of advice, it's to find an instructor or a mentor or a role model that inspires you, not just in how they ride, but in how they work with horses and how they interact with people in general. Somebody that you can go to day after day and you can watch the videos, or you can ask them questions, or you can watch the DVDs, and it becomes more than just a riding figure, but it becomes a role model, and try to find that person for you.
Very good advice here with Sinead and Tick at Copperline Farm. I'm learning a lot. This is just a great opportunity on a beautiful day at a beautiful farm. Our very next segment coming up, we're going to meet Brooks. If you haven't met Brooks yet, he's amazing and fun, and he's going to be joining us for our next segment with Tick and Sinead. I'm Louisa Barton for the Horse Talk Show.